In this video, we just look at some basic terminology when dealing with polynomials. The first thing I want to do is show you two different ways that polynomials can be written. So let's start with that. The two most common ways that polynomials are written are as, number one, a sum of terms, okay? Number two, and by the way, the sum of terms, that is the simplified version. We'll talk about why soon. The other common way is a product of factors. That is the factored version. Okay, so let's say a sum of terms. So we could have something like 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9. And so this is a polynomial. Each of these is a term. So this has 3 terms. The terms are the things that are added or subtracted. And also each term typically has a variable raised to a power, and we're only going to work with polynomials that have one variable, and so in this case the variable is x. So this term has an x cubed, this term has an x squared. This term does not have an x at all. In fact, you could say it's x to the 0 power, because x to the 0 power is 1, and 9 times 1 is just 9. So let me just put that as an aside here, just to remind you that anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay? So that's the simplified version. It's called the simplified version because we can't simplify it anymore. Can't be simplified further. There are no more like terms. We can't multiply anything together, etc. So that's a sum of terms. Now a sum means add, but as you can see, it could also be subtracted. Okay? The second way polynomials are commonly written is a product of factors, called the factored version. So maybe something like 2 times the quantity x minus 1 squared times x plus 4 times x minus 3 cubed. This is also a polynomial. This is the factored version. If you were to simplify this, by the way, it's factored because it's multiplication. It's 2 times this factor times this factor times this factor. It's a bunch of stuff multiplied together, basically. If you were to multiply all of this out and simplify it, then you could at least nail down the first term. So if we simplified, which would be a lot of work actually, because x minus 1 squared, you'd have to take x minus 1 times itself and distribute. X minus 3 cubed, you have to multiply it by itself 3 times and distribute multiple times. But without doing all that, you could see that the first term would be, well, we'd have a 2, because 2 is multiplied by this x minus 1 squared. And if you multiply x minus 1 squared out, the first term would be x squared, so 2 times x squared, times x plus 4, the first term is just x, times x minus 3 cubed. If you multiply that out, the first term would just be x cubed. And 2 times x squared times x cubed is 2x to the 6th. Now we would still have some smaller terms after that, but this would be the first term. So this is factored, and this is simplified, because you can't combine any like terms. Okay, now there is more stuff after this that you'd have to see, and you would see that by actually multiplying all this out in detail. I was just showing you that we could at least see the first term without doing much work at all in multiplying this out. So we have a simplified version where you've got stuff added and subtracted, you've got terms. Over here we have a factored version that could easily be turned into the simplified version if you multiplied it all out. Okay, so that's just some basic terminology there. Okay? Now, the rest of the terms we're going to work with apply to the simplified version of a polynomial. So each term of a polynomial has what's called a degree. The degree of a term is the power on the variable. Okay? So if we go back up here, let's grab this polynomial that we worked with, this simplified polynomial. Two x cubed, that term has degree 3, okay? Because the exponent on the variable is 3. 3x squared is degree 2, because x is squared. And finally, negative 9 is degree 0, because of what we said before. It's like multiplied by x to the 0 power. Okay? So each term has a degree. We commonly write polynomials in descending order. Okay? Where the terms are arranged from highest degree to lowest degree. Okay? Sometimes descending order is called decreasing degree as well. And that's useful because it's a little more specific as to what's happening. The degree of the terms will decrease. And so this polynomial up here could be written as 3x squared minus 9 plus 2x cubed, right? That's the same polynomial. This is not in descending order, because the first term has degree 2, and so every term after that should be lower than degree 2, but the third term has degree 3. Okay? But 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9 is in descending order. Okay? Also, you'll notice this is degree 3, degree 2, degree 0. There's no degree 1 term. So if you wanted, you could write this polynomial as 2x cubed plus 3x squared plus 0x to the first minus 9. And sometimes that's useful for different applications of polynomials, where if there's any terms that are missing, for example, this one was missing the degree 1 term, you can add it in and just put what's called a coefficient in front of it of 0. Okay? So just again, some basic terminology here when dealing with polynomials. Alright, so we understand degree, we understand descending order, terms. The leading term of a polynomial is the highest degreed term. It's not always the first term. Okay? The leading term of a polynomial is the highest degreed term. If we write our polynomials in descending order, then the first term is always the leading term. So that's useful. The name makes a little more sense in that case. So if we go back to our previous example, let me grab this guy again. The leading term is 2x cubed. It's not the first term, but it's the highest degree. If we write it in descending order, as we saw before, then it's 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9. Then you can see the first term is the leading term. Okay? So again, this is an advantage of writing in descending order. Now, the leading coefficient is the coefficient of the leading term. What is coefficient? Well, a coefficient is the constant multiplied in the term. Okay? So, in 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9, the 2, the positive 3, and the negative 9 are called coefficients. Okay, because they're the constants that are multiplied by the variable terms. Okay, and then 2 is the leading coefficient because it is the coefficient of the leading term. The leading term is 2x cubed, and 2 is the coefficient of the leading term. Now, we've talked about the degree of a term. The degree of a polynomial, of the entire polynomial, is the highest degree within the polynomial. Okay, we'll keep it very simple. I don't want to be too technical here. I want to make it this easy to follow. So let's look at some examples. So 1 plus x, if we put that in descending order, is x plus 1. And if you want to see all the details of this polynomial, it would be 1 x to the first plus 1 x to the 0. And so the highest degree is the first degree. So this is a degree 1. I'm not saying you should write your polynomials this way. I'm just showing you so you can see it. So is a degree 1 polynomial. Now, this polynomial has two terms. So instead of saying poly, which means many, and nomial, which means terms, we'll still use nomial for terms, but we know specifically it has two terms, so we'll use bi instead of polynomial. Binomial, two terms. The next polynomial is, if we put it in descending order, it's negative 1 x squared if you want to. Sorry, I forgot to put my x term in there. Plus 2x plus 3. The highest degree is, of course, the first term, and so this is a degree 2. And this has three terms, so we could say trinomial. Okay? Next, if we put this in descending order, well, it already is, so I don't need to rearrange. This is degree 3. Is a degree 3 trinomial. Now, binomials and trinomials are the only names we have. If there's one term, you could say a monomial. You don't encounter those terribly often. Okay, so this next one, if we put in descending order, would be 1/4 x to the 4th plus 3x. And the highest degree is 4, so this is a degree 4. And since it has two terms, it's a binomial. Okay? Now, real quick, I'll put some summary down here and we'll add one more set of terms to what we've learned. So we've talked about the number of terms, we've talked about the degree. Now we give special names to certain degrees. Degree 1 polynomials are called linear. So this very first one is a degree 1, or we could say a linear binomial because it's degree 1. The next one is degree 2 trinomial, so we could say quadratic. Now you have to be careful. A lot of people see quad and think 4. How do you read a second power? You read a second power as squared. So a square has 4 sides. It's kind of a leap there, but maybe it'll help you remember quadratic for degree 2. Degree 3 is called cubic. So it's a cubic trinomial in this case. And degree 4 is called quartic. So in this case, this is a quartic binomial. Degree 5, I suppose, could be called quintic. And you could probably create names for others. These may perhaps be the most common names for common degrees. Okay, the video went longer than I expected, but there were a lot of terms to cover. I hope it's all very clear. Good luck to you.